Welcome back to No Longer Afraid. I am sitting here with the most incredible man in my life.
Tell me about him.
Well, the conversations never get old.
Yes.
It's so much fun talking to you about crazy topics that a lot of people don't want to talk about.
Yeah.
But we somehow just go there.
But we're real and raw.
You know what? I love people that are real and raw. And anytime I hear someone sharing vulnerably or sharing from a place that is uncomfortable for the rest of the room, I just applaud. I'm like, let's go vulnerability, because we need more of that in our world.
That's right.
Because a lot of us are struggling in secret, but we are so afraid to expose it. Meanwhile, everyone else is struggling with the same thing.
That's right.
Can we talk about that, my love?
Yeah, let's go. I think it's so powerful, vulnerability, because it really like shifts stuff.
Yes.
People that are always real, always open. What's powerful about it is that people cannot relate to you having it all together.
Yes.
People can't relate to you being perfect, having a perfect life, having a perfect...
That's true.
But people can always relate to you struggling and overcoming stuff.
That's right.
Yeah. I mean, they say that if you speak, for those that speak, if you speak from your weakness, you'll never run out of content. If you have to speak from perfection,
That's me.
You got to keep making stuff up. But if you speak from real life, you'll never run out of content. And that's what touches people, because we can relate to that. We're on a journey of health, of looking more like the Lord, but that journey has its ups and downs and its struggles. So I love that you and I are both real. You
know what? It took a fight to get here.
It did. Because it was easier to hide in shame. It was easier to hide about what we really went through.
Yeah. Do you remember that time in our marriage where I had so many buttons that you couldn't press, and I was just a big old red button?
Yeah.
I was like, don't go here. Do not press that one. Do not talk about that. Do not go there.
Yeah. Don't ever do that.
Meanwhile, you had your own buttons.
Oh.
But Lord knows I wasn't even touching them because I was too busy protecting mine.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to kind of go after a little bit of the fear of intimacy, shame in marriage, because that's a big one that actually shocks us, right? When we hear couples that don't talk about certain things in their marriage or are afraid of talking to each other about some of their shortcomings or some of the things that they struggle with. It's mind-blowing to me, because this is supposed to be the closest person in your life. But of course I get it, because the devil's always after the marriage.
And we've been married now we're just coming up on 16 years here.
Let's go.
16 years. It feels like we're still babies.
I know.
We're
just now starting to kind of understand this idea of death to self. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
we're definitely enjoying the fruit of what we have fought for, right? And so I kind of want to touch on this idea of shame in marriage. I know that we walked through some stuff in our life, and I think we touched on that a bit with my journey. But I want to kind of get in your journey and like specifically
Let's go.
The area of like sexual purity, how important is that in marriage, and is an issue like pornography solved in marriage or with marriage? Yeah. Is it?
No, not at all. You've said it before that marriage is a magnifying glass.
Yes.
So whatever issues you have, marriage will never fix them. It'll only magnify them.
Uh-oh.
So if you come in with a problem of lust or pornography or an addiction of some kind, and you think like, oh, like what I've been missing and longing for will now be fulfilled, and now I won't have that problem. And that's probably one of the falsest beliefs people believe, that marriage will fix them. Actually, it'll expose them, and the struggle will actually begin to get even more real. Yeah.
Why is that?
Why does marriage expose?
Because I have found that when a couple is not married, there's a fight to stay pure. And then when they get married, let's just even talk about the idea of purity. When they get married, there's a fight to having sex.
That's true. Well, it's been said like this, that the enemy will try to get you to be physically intimate before the marriage covenant. He'll do everything where everything in you is raging and you're just wanting to be intimate. And then as soon as you get married and have covenant, he'll do everything so that you won't have intimacy.
Wow.
Because before the covenant is established, the most damaging thing you can do to your soul is to be inappropriate, impure, immoral. And then when you are in covenant marriage, the greatest blessing you can have is to be intimate and together. And so he wants to destroy covenant before and after. The way he does it before is he tries to get you intimate before covenant. In whatever ways, in your mind, in your soul, physically, in every way. Sometimes people think that if I didn't have the act of sex, then I'm pure. I made it. Like, let's put a stamp of like, we're awesome. And actually, Jesus said, if you look lustfully, it's identical to adultery. So Jesus is after our heart.
Because it's the same impact, though.
Same impact.
It's this idea of shame again. Like, it doesn't matter that you looked at or you did the act.
That's right.
It's the imprint of shame that's left on you.
And even on the level of biology and psychology, they've actually discovered that your soul is wired by experiences, not by information or even like necessarily like an action, but by an experience that you feel. So like looking at something inappropriate, pornography, whatever, the feeling you get, it wires you and destroys you identically to having the act.
Wow. Because
your soul doesn't distinguish between a dream, imagination, and real life. And so the level of damage and the level of, sin that's why Jesus says it's identical. It happened in your imagination, in your heart, or it happened in real life. He calls it all adultery. It's very fascinating.
Yeah.
So we were talking about this
Both
idea that
bring destruction.
Exactly. That marriage doesn't solve issues, it exposes it, because now you kind of like, you relax and you allow yourself to become who you are, because now you're not like trying to stay pure unto a deadline called, well, I want to get married, I want to impress my spouse or whatever else. Like all of a sudden you just are like, wow, well now I'm married, and there's other, but it exposes who you really are. So I think coming into marriage, both of us, we talked about your journey, we'll talk about my journey a little bit today, but both of us had hidden stuff. I think we grew up in an environment, a culture where it wasn't modeled to be open. Even, in the churches we grew up in, and the preaching, it was like you were taught what the truth was and what the law was and what perfection was. It was never modeled to struggle. It was never modeled to struggle openly. It was never modeled that even leaders ever had a struggle. And so you almost thought that
nobody struggled.
Yeah, no one struggled. I'm the only one struggling. And if people find out I struggle, since no one else struggles, game over for me. I'm going to be cut off from society and the world. And so I think we both learned, and were even told that it was okay. Hey, like, do your little confession privately to your pastor or leader, and then it's done. Like, you'll never have to talk about it again. And it's almost, it goes back to like, I don't know, a religious, even Catholic doctrine of like, confession, like exposing what your problem is almost guilt alleviation, but there's no life transformation.
Wow. Because
it's not in guilt alleviation that sets you free. It's when you actually live your life as an open book in the light.
Okay. Let's talk about the beginning of our marriage. Shortly, I don't remember, a couple of years in, where you came to me about some of the struggles that you were experiencing in your single life.
Yeah.
And that probably you assumed was going to fix in marriage, get fixed in marriage. It wasn't like an ongoing pornography addiction, but there had been moments where you struggled with pornography, and you came to share that with me. Like, walk me through that journey of how, like, why you even decided to share, open up. Yeah,
that's good. I'll just start with like where I was introduced. Actually, like growing up, I was pretty sheltered and pretty oblivious. I mean, now that I counsel young men, I'm like, wow, like I'm an anomaly, but probably it wasn't even until the age of 18 that I discovered, like self-gratification and impurity and all that kind of stuff. Like, I think I was tempted by stuff in childhood, but I didn't know how it all, like, it worked. And so I think I was 18, my senior year in high school, where I was just like, came across like, self-gratification or whatever. And then it became something that
So self-gratification as in like pornography, masturbation.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly. And so, and it kind of like shocked me. And then when I shortly after that started college, and I was now away from home, away from my community, I was completely by myself, like in a dorm room. Now I have access to a computer that has internet and everything else. And so it started to become a temptation. I remember probably for about a year or two, off and on, it would be like I would stumble and I would look at something and I would feel so ashamed and guilty, and would try with my best effort to never stumble again, to get rid of everything. And I would be good for a month, sometimes two. I'd be like, man, like that's it, I overcame it. Good for a couple of months, 3 months. And then bam, I'd fall again in a moment where, maybe there was pressure or anxiety or whatever happening in my life, because I wasn't healthy in my soul. I didn't know how to like bring people into my journey. I didn't know how to have real conversations.
I think as most people still, they just don't know, because that area is still so shameful.
Yes.
Especially growing up in the church.
Yes. So because I had a lot of shame and I didn't know how to be vulnerable and talk, so anytime I'd go through something difficult, the escape was, and I didn't know it back then, but it was actually just medication and escape, was to go into something that would fulfill and satisfy my lusts, that would make me feel better temporarily, but then leave me in a mess of shame. So I remember, I don't know, maybe I was like 19 years old, maybe 20. My youth pastor did a whole series on purity and without mixture, and did this whole like for men, this like 2 or 3 day retreat. And I remember there, I came and exposed it to my leader, my small group leader, and we prayed through and talked about it. And those 2-3 days at that conference, and then me starting to walk in the light, literally broke off
so good.
This reoccurring ongoing issue, even though like it wasn't this daily or even weekly thing, but just this, I stumbled in the area of purity and this and that, and I thought, okay, cool, it's done. And then I thought, okay, now I'm still feeling temptation. I'm not falling, but when I get married, I will no longer feel temptation, because now I'll have a wife. I can have intimacy with her. Like all the things that I'm tempted with, I'll be fulfilled. So why would I stumble? That was the lie I believe that most people believe. And then we got married, and because we still both hadn't gone on a journey of emotional health and actually healing of stuff that had happened, we were as open as we knew how to be, but we didn't know how to actually be open like we are now. And so I think in marriage, I started to see that, like, I don't know, my wife, even though she was amazing in this and that, like it didn't satisfy, like it can't satisfy a sinful lust. Like marriage, and no matter how amazing or beautiful your spouse is, they can never satisfy sin. Sin is insatiable and unsatisfiable.
Right.
And so I think I don't know, maybe a year and a half or 2 into our marriage, it was like the thing that I'd been free from years, like came back. And like, I remember actually, it was a couple years into our marriage, because I think it was in Dallas, Texas. We were living there and in Bible school, pursuing God every day in classes, and then going to work. And we would go on these trips, and sometimes I'd be by myself and staying in a hotel room, and all this temptation would come. And then I just found myself like stumbling again, specifically in the area of like pornography and impurity. And then again, it brought this shame, because now I'm like in ministry school. We had planted a church before, or I helped with a church plant. We were in ministry. I was preaching, teaching. You were leading worship. We were both leading marriage ministry and small groups and all this kind of stuff. We were in ministry, and now we're in a season to train and get away with the Lord and train for more ministry, and then do more ministry. And
which is wild, right? Because that doesn't help anything.
No.
Ministry won't fix it.
Yeah. And then to discover myself struggling, I was like, I can't tell anyone, because up until that point, all leaders had never modeled vulnerability, especially from the stage, or even personally to me. Like even when I would open up to my leader, he would never mention that he ever struggled.
Yeah.
It was always this like, I'm going to pray for you. I'm going to be here for you. You're messed up and broken. And so just this reoccurring lie of like, you are messed up. If people find out who you really are, you will never have anything in life. And I think I lived with that. And as I hid it because of that shame, anything hidden can never be healed. And so I found myself now like stumbling, and then time would go by and stumbling, and time would go by and stumbling. And then I got to a place where we actually moved from Dallas and we moved to Ventura. And it was the first time I was under a leader that walked transparent and vulnerable and asked me like, Vic, how are you doing? How are your eyes? Have you seen anything that you should not have seen? And I was like, at first I was scared because maybe shame could be exposed, but then I was so grateful because I watched a leader, both from the stage, even on Sundays, just share about struggle, life, temptation, and not have to put it together, not have to be together. And it gave me permission to then go to you. It was in Ventura, probably at the beginning of our season there. I came to you and I was like, hey, I really need to open up. And it's just like, probably for nearly a year, I'd struggled in silence. I was so afraid to tell you. I thought, you don't know this about me. Are you going to want to be married to me still? Is this going to cause a division in our marriage? I'm now moved in a church plant. I'm on staff at a church. I'm leading, we're starting to lead a Bible school. We're associate pastors. You get licensed. I forget the timeline of all of when it happened, but like there was significant ministry authority on me. And here I am like, hey, I have to be honest with you. Like over the last, I don't know, year or so, I have been struggling and I'm done. Like I just wanted to be seen and known. And at that point, like because of the shame and because of my life, I was just like, I don't care if I lose everything. I just have to come into the light because I want to be free.
Wow.
Because that's what helped me when I was like 18 or 19. I came into the light with my leader and it like set me free. And then, you know, I came to you and you were so, I think it was hard.
Yeah.
And you were shocked. You didn't know what to do. And I think I remember you mentioning like, babe, if this goes on, I'm going to tell our pastor. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I think that's the right thing to do. I give you permission.
I think you were like, I'm already talking to him.
Yeah, but it was like, I felt this like, because we didn't know how to handle that. And it almost felt this like, even more like pressure and condemnation because we were just beginning the journey, but it was so worth it.
Yeah. And I think my response was directly connected to my own brokenness because I think anytime we're still experiencing shame in our own life, when someone else exposes their shame, we tend to get like legalistic about it. I don't know what it is. Like
we think that what's going to help
bringing down the law is going to make it better.
The law, and scaring me like, I'm going to tell people.
Yeah.
And it's almost like you feel shame and we use more shame to stop bad behavior. But actually shame is the thing that keeps you stuck.
Yes.
Walking in the light heals you.
And it was a journey for sure. But I remember what the result or the fruit of what you did in that season actually brought this layer of intimacy we had never experienced in our life.
That's right.
Because now it's like, and I was on my own journey. We both were. I mean, we were like pretty raw. But what had happened was we started to experience this, we started to fully know one another in a way we haven't experienced before. Right. And I think to this day, anytime like something will come up, like, I don't know, like something that needs to be brought into the light that is like literally powerless, but it's like lingering.
That's right.
It's just like a suggestion to any of you guys that have something that comes up over and over again. It must mean that it needs to come into the light.
Yes.
And I think for us, like even with the journey with my like, trauma and like a memory, a situation, like a trigger, for lack of, like I don't like that word, but something would come up and like triggers are fine as long as we deal with them. That's what I say. But that's besides the point. I think what would happen is the second that I would expose it, it would lose its power.
That's right.
And so I think you're right. My reaction wasn't good in the beginning, but that's just because I was on my own journey trying to figure out where I was going to break open to you because of all the of my own shame that I was experiencing. But now in hindsight, we have discovered like that anytime we bring something to the light that's lingering inside of us, will immediately bring like a level of intimacy that we haven't known.
Yeah. And the lie is, this is going to break my marriage or break my relationship. But the truth is that it actually unites it and makes it more intimate because you have to be fully known and seen to have that. I'm reminded of a passage of scripture in 1 John. It says that if you walk in the light as he is in the light. What does walking in the light mean? That you walk with everything exposed and vulnerable. Then you have fellowship with one another.
Wow.
So walking in the light is the key for fellowship. And that word fellowship is, I believe it's the word koinonia, which is like this intimate, I know you, I see you, and I'm one with you.
Fully being known.
Yes. Like we have communion. It's like joint participation where like the two become mingled in one. It creates this soul tie that as I walk in the light, only when I walk in the light, I have this koinonia fellowship with you. But if I don't walk in the light, I can pretend I can be in a marriage and even have physical intimacy, but have no actual intimacy. How many marriages have regular physical intimacy, but no emotional intimacy, no heart intimacy? And the reason why is because there's things that they've never walked in the light in.
Wow.
And I love, we talk about this often, that like, if there's anything in your life that's never been shared by you to people, if there's people that don't know every secret about you, and if you're even afraid to talk about something, let's say that was like happened in the past and you're afraid to talk about it, it means you're unhealed. There's still shame connected to it.
Let's go.
Anything that you can't talk about means there's shame, because shame causes you to hide. And then shame, again, we talked about in a previous episode, that shame says, I am wrong, I'm messed up. Because if you detach yourself from the situation that happened to you, or the sin that you did, you won't be afraid to talk about it because it's not who you are. But shame says it's still who you are, you can't bring it up.
Wow.
And so I found that anyone with secrets, anyone that has secrets from their spouse, there's anything that you haven't told fully over and over again, it's because you think it's who you are. Because shame says you are bad.
Wow.
Guilt says I did something bad. Shame says you are bad. It's an identity statement. And so I think it's so powerful that the Lord in his grace took us on this journey of like vulnerability. And I was able to come into the light with you and then start to get freedom. And what's crazy about freedom is that freedom can be a journey, and it can even be a moment. Deliverance can be a moment, but healing is a journey. But so is actually like temptation. Like to this day, we've been married for 16 years, almost 16 years now. But temptation in the area of purity and lust has never gone away. There's some seasons where it's more, there's some seasons where it's less. But I have found in the seasons that it's less, it's because I'm walking in the light with you. There's the grace. Moment I'm tempted, you know, because the Bible says this, that God gives grace to the humble. What does it mean to be humble? It means that you bring even what you feel tempted with, you bring it. Because shame says like, well, you didn't do anything. You didn't sin. You just felt tempted. Hide that.
Wow.
But someone that's healthy, that walks in the light, that wants fellowship, koinonia, intimacy, is going to be like, hey, this is what I've been feeling. This is what I've been being attacked with. As I started to do that with my group of guys in my small group, with people that I'm walking with in my life, with you, there's a grace that comes to me, because the temptation never leaves, but sometimes you have grace to overcome it. And there are other times you won't have grace. So over our 16 years of marriage, there's times where I was really tempted. And whenever I hid and didn't tell you first, my first layer of grace is my wife. Other layers of grace are like friends and, you know, leaders and whatever. Right. But whenever I wouldn't tell you, it would lead to a journey where I would start to struggle in my thoughts, and then sometimes even in my actions. But whenever I would bring stuff to the light, there was a grace that would flow to me. And I think that's the key in marriage. And I think that's the key in life. Let's say you're not married, but you're not walking in the light about everything. There's any secrets in your life, those are lies, because shame is a liar. Shame says you're bad.
Is a liar.
Yeah.
And shame begets shame. And when you live in shame,
tell us that. Shame begets shame.
Well, to me, I think of it even as a generational thing. I remember raising London and feeling shame when she was like, I don't know, 2 years old, throwing a fit. I'd feel so like ashamed that I'm a bad mom because my child is acting out.
Wow.
And when the Lord started to deal with my shame, I was like, I don't care. My kid's throwing a fit. This is who she is right now. Like, this is nothing to do with my parenting. I mean, yes, to some degree, I'm always working on being a better mom. But I find that if I hadn't dealt with my shame, I can only imagine how much that would have affected my child our children, and they would begin to hide in the things
That's right.
that I was hiding.
And that's passed on.
Yes. And just like you're saying, when you don't see leaders talk about it.
That's right.
I see parents not talking
That's
about
right.
it.
So
See
leaders
parents
don't
not
talk about their
addressing.
weaknesses and their problems and their issues. Parents don't talk about it. So guess what it does? The next generation
Yeah.
doesn't talk about it.
That's right.
Because they've seen someone hiding,
That's right.
not being real, that they actually struggle. And then all of a sudden they aren't real.
Wow.
And one of the things that we love to say is that it's okay to
Yeah.
struggle, because the struggle is
Yeah.
real and the struggle is our journey.
real.
But it's not okay to struggle alone. Meaning,
Yes.
like, when you struggle alone, there's no grace
No.
flowing to you. Grace only flows to the humble.
Yeah.
Humility looks like
Yeah.
opening up and walking in the light.
Yeah. And temptation, I think it's very, very important for us to understand the temptation. There's no sin in temptation.
No, Jesus was tempted with
Yes.
everything and yet without sin.
But shame will corner us
That's
in our
right.
temptation.
Yeah, shame will lie and say, you were tempted with this. It's because you are this.
Yeah.
Let's say you're tempted with like a sexual sin or
Yeah.
a bad thought.
Yeah.
Like, that's because you're a pervert.
Yeah.
So he'll instantly take even a temptation that he plants in you.
Wow.
It's not even from you. It's not from your heart. It's not from you. He'll plant a thought into your mind and say, that came from you. That's who you are.
Wow. I've actually had conversations with multiple people about thoughts that they've had, even like homosexual thoughts.
That's right.
They never acted on it. They don't know where it came from. It was just a thought. And all of a sudden,
They think that's who they
thought
are.
started to shame them because
That's right.
no one's really talking about it. So how am I going to bring this to the light? This is so taboo, especially like in the church.
That's
and so it was wild to me that they were afraid to dismantle it in the light. I mean, it's not shocking because this idea is this idea of exposing shame, I think, is still so important, and we have to teach it to the next
That's right.
generation. We
That's
have
right.
to show them that they can expose shame. Like, I mean, let's shame.
That's right.
You know
Amen.
what I'm saying? Like, let's
call it
shame
what it is.
shame. Yes. And I am like passionate about this conversation because I'm seeing how many people are living in the same struggle, just silently.
That's right. And even the one you brought up sometimes like has like so much shame around it, but like, let's just say a homosexual thought or temptation,
Right.
which is not in you. It's not who God created you to be. It's not your identity, but let's
It's
say
not
you
yours.
have that.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say that Jesus ever had homosexual temptations?
I mean, I think Jesus had every temptation.
That's what the Bible says, right?
Yeah.
So even that temptation,
Yes.
Jesus had it.
Wow.
For me, I've had that temptation throughout my life.
Wow.
And I know that like, I've never acted on it, never went beyond that. But I realized now I can look back and say like, instead of thinking back like, I
Wow.
can't believe I had the temptation, I think something's wrong with me. Instead of being like, I had that temptation, that's not me. It didn't even originate in me. It originated from the liar. And now he wants me to hide it and pretend like I never had it.
Dang.
So I've told many, many people that I've counseled now when they come to me with that temptation, or even maybe they act it out, but it's still not who they are. I'm like, I've had that temptation many times throughout many years of my life, but it's still not who I am. Have you ever had a homosexual temptation?
Come on. Maybe. I don't
Not that you can
recall.
remember. Yeah.
But I think I've definitely been on the journey of even walking through the sexual trauma that I went through, of not allowing myself to be open to the idea of, being with the guy. Not that I wanted to be with the girl, but there was this like, man,
You almost
I don't know
were
if
like,
I
I don't
don't
wanna
know
be
if I
with
want to
men.
be married.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I'm so afraid of this thing. And I'm afraid that it's obviously it was the past trauma, and the Lord healed all of that. But I can't even tell you how many temptations just need to be exposed,
brought to the light,
so that they just become powerless in
That's
your
right.
life.
And sometimes we're afraid even to speak the temptation. Like, I had this thought, I had this feeling, I had this. But when you speak it, you yourself realize it's a lie.
Wow.
No one even has to convince you like, man, that's a lie. You're like, this is a lie.
I know. Yeah.
There's something powerful about walking in the light, bringing things to the light, where the Lord will tell you, that's a lie, Vic. So I think there's freedom in bringing everything to the light, every feeling. I've been on a journey of emotional healing, emotional health, actually. And one of the things I realized is that it doesn't matter about talking about your feelings. Like expressing emotion is good, and I was okay with that, but I was never good about talking about my emotions. But I realized that was unhealthy. And now as I realize, like, I can talk about my temptations, my emotions, my feelings, because that's not who I am. But if I can't talk about it, it means I'm hiding in shame.
I love that version of you. You're so real.
It's caused so much more intimacy in our relationship. Just like
true.
We're so connected.
It's true.
Heart,
we could just
mind,
like say one thing and just cry over it together now. It's beautiful.
And we want this for all of those that are listening.
That's right.
We want you to experience real deep fellowship with the Lord and with others.
Experience true intimacy, what it feels like to be fully known. It is the most beautiful thing. We're going to have more conversations like this in the future. I'm going to bring some of my dearest people on this podcast who I have just allowed myself to be known, and they've broke open their lives and allowed me to know them. And it's so, so powerful. So let's dismantle shame in our marriages. Let's live naked
and unashamed,
without shame.
Genesis 2:26.
Unashamed. That is your favorite scripture.
It's one of them.
I'm kidding.
Early on, for maybe the wrong reasons, but but Genesis 2:26. God creates so Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve, and He creates them in His perfect image and likeness, and He makes them. He creates them naked, without clothing initially, and without shame.
Come on,
naked and unashamed.
So we dare you to expose shame in your life. And watch.
We're not saying walk around naked in this world. We're saying live in the light.
Some disclosures.
In your soul, be naked, exposed, be vulnerable. And one of the cool things about your book, No Longer Afraid, is that this conversation that we had, even in our marriage and my struggles, we write it. You write it. We didn't write. I didn't write any of it. You just got permission from me. And I was like, yes, absolutely.
Let's go.
You go deeper into these things. And every chapter is a new layer of a new fear and new shame that you expose. So I really encourage you, get the book No Longer Afraid. It'll expose different fears and shames that maybe you're dealing with.
Because underneath all that, there is the real you.
The real you that God says.
Thanks for joining us. See y'all next time.
See you next time. Love you.